Hello, we're back for the scientific revolution. Now, through the scientific revolution, we have the main basic astronomers, Copernicus, Galileo, those sorts of characters. But we also have the medical side of things, which usually isn't highlighted. Typically in grade schools, high schools, they refer to Galileo and the astronomers. Now, that certainly is important. But also, what I'd like to address a little bit is some of the other members of this revolution of sorts. Now, to first start off, revolution generally gives the idea that the event is fast and quick and drastic. Now, the scientific revolution certainly isn't going to be fast. It certainly is going to be drastic because it's going to change how people view the world a little bit. But the entirety of the scientific revolution, at least to its understanding, will take something like 100 to 200 years. So, an argument is certainly out there that it may not be a revolution. But it certainly does, in the end, change people's ideas of the world they live in. Now, how did this actually occur? Well, the scientific revolution occurred because a lot of scholars, educated individuals, had acquired some ancient Greek writings as the Ottoman Empire decreased in power. More friendly relations was being established with the Muslim states, and therefore some of these writings were finally permeating into Western civilization. As a result, their writings were compared to the Latin writings acquired from the Roman world. Not to say that Greek writings never made it over to, for example, the Western world, but more of those writings were actually coming about. Now, once they compared these two documents, they realized there were some contradictory statements. And so as a result, a lot of these scholars and education individuals decided they wanted to look into, interpret, and figure out what the real answer was. And so this provided a situation where these educated individuals were investigating the world around them, the universe, nature, and all that good stuff. So that's going to provoke the search for the truth, as a matter of fact. Now, I'll come back to the astronomy point of it all, but what I'd like to address with the medicine, that's certainly going to be more of a practical purpose that's going to change the lives of a lot of people. Now, generally, it's going to apply to the upper class and then eventually the middle class, since it's still going to be relatively expensive for medical surgeries and that sort of thing. So the advancements under Celsius, as well as some of the advancements of Newton, as well as mainly William Harvey, those are certainly going to be important as far as the medical field progresses. But it's still going to take to about the 1800s for these ideas to become more or less a fact and then used in practical purposes. So this still is going to be a relatively long period of time to figure out what's going on. Now, these figures that I have mentioned, Paracelsus, for example, he believed that a chemical imbalance occurred and it wasn't, for example, God being angry with you for being, for lack of a better term, not as faithful as potentially could be. And so he believed that some sort of medicine needed to be used to cure a patient. And that's something we commonly think of today. Back in this period, that sort of idea didn't exist. Then quickly going on to Vesalius. He's a professor of surgery, and he decided to dissect human cadavers to demonstrate some of the manuals of medicine that were being produced of the day. And the manuals were being produced by the ideas of Galen, an ancient Greek physician. Now, many of the locations of the organs were borrowed from animals, which, of course, is a little bit strange to think about. There was the belief that the heart, the lungs, the stomach, and everything else in animals, like rabbits, for example, would be in the same locations as in a human. But that's going to be slightly inaccurate, of course, due to the size. But the idea of dissecting a human being was certainly frowned upon in his day and age, and in the search of discovery of organs and such, that sort of sentiment kind of went on the wayside. And so Vesalius was able to determine the correct locations of these organs. And of course, you can kind of imagine the confusion when he actually dissected the human cadaver to find out that Galen was largely wrong on a lot of different things. But then finally, William Harvey, he's the one who's going to discover that we have one complete blood system instead of two, which was thought by Galen as well, and of course taught in all the universities from that point onward. And so he found out the idea there's one blood system, not two. So all these ideas are going to come together and slowly be worked into the sciences, and then finally used for practical purposes in the 17th, but mostly the 1800s, when we start to really see medical knowledge really flourish. So it's going to take quite a long process. The other element of the scientific revolution is going to be the scientific method, which a lot of people use these days and may not think too much about it. But the scientific method was first proposed a little bit by Socrates, Aristotle, some of these ancient Greek individuals, but it's going to be furthered in part by Francis Bacon and Newton. Francis Bacon thought of producing experiments and then basing these experiments on the observations of the world that we live in. But Newton took that a little bit step further, and he decided that we should have these observations and experiments and arrive to some general concept of what's going on, and then test these general conclusions to come to a more precise decision. So taking a big picture, look at things, and then slowly coming to a more precise conclusion about whether it be gravity or how animals move about, reproduction, that sort of thing. But the main goal of these sciences was to create devices to further agriculture, industry, and trade for the Western powers. That's going to provide the motivation for a lot of these states as well as individuals to move away a little bit to profit off of a lot of these sciences. So looking for individual wealth and certainly betterment for themselves as well as their families. So in the end, part of the significance of the scientific revolution is certainly some of these discoveries. They're important, but also the motivation for technical and technological innovation is going to be profit motive, betterment of their lives, make their lives easier, which is a little bit different than some of the other cultures around the world. But also this idea forwarded by Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, these sorts of individuals. They look into the sky, they've tracked where the planets are moving, where the moon is, the sun, and they determine that we're all revolving around the sun. And one of the primary consequences of that is certainly going to be the reduction in the power of the church itself. Now that the concept that the church has been teaching them and everything else they have known is shattered a little bit. Now, it wasn't the intention of these scientists to shatter this sort of idea, and they certainly did believe in God, and they thought they were understanding some of the rules and laws that God had imposed on the world he had created. But in combination of this world figure and how the world moves, and that these planets weren't made of crystal and pure forces, and also with the combination of looking at profits and how technology and sciences can better mankind, you start to see a reduction in the influence of the church itself. So you take all that together, which you can read in the textbook itself, the individual accomplishments of all these individuals, but you're starting to see a trend going towards a little bit of towards industry and sciences rather than following through with the church. So that'll be it for this section.